The auction block smelled of sweat and shame, and Rose Whitfield stood upon it with her chin raised high even as the auctioneer's voice rang out across the dusty square in Val Verde, Texas, calling for bids on her contract like she was nothing more than livestock to be sold to the highest bidder. It was September of 1872, and the heat pressed down like a physical weight on everyone gathered in the town square. Rose had arrived in Texas 3 months earlier, one of dozens of young women who had answered advertisements back east promising respectable positions as school teachers and governesses. The reality had been far different. The man who had paid their passage, a cruel profiteer named Edmund Thorne, had held their debts over their heads and now stood to profit from selling off their labor contracts to whoever would pay. Rose was 22 years old, with dark auburn hair that caught the sunlight and green eyes that had seen too much hardship in recent months. Her dress was simple calico, faded and dusty from the journey, but she wore it with dignity. She would not let these people see her break. She would not give Thorne that satisfaction. "This one's educated," the auctioneer called out, a portly man with a handlebar mustache who seemed to take far too much pleasure in his work. "Can read and write, do sums. She'll make a fine addition to any household or business establishment." "Who will start the bidding at $100 for her contract?" Rose felt bile rise in her throat. Around the square, men assessed her with calculating eyes. Some were merchants looking for help in their stores. Others were ranchers seeking domestic workers. And some had looks in their eyes that made her skin crawl, men who ran the saloons and brothels that lined the main street. 100, called a voice from the back, and Rose recognized the owner of the Lucky Star Saloon, a man with greasy hair and a reputation for working girls until they dropped. 125, countered another voice, this one belonging to a stern-faced woman who ran a boarding house known for its harsh treatment of servants. Rose's hands trembled at her sides, but she kept her expression neutral. She had been raised in Boston, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a clerk. Her parents had died of fever 2 years ago, leaving her with nothing. She had taken the offer to come west because she had believed it was her only chance at a new life. She had not known it was a trap. 150, said a new voice, deep and steady, cutting through the rising bids with quiet authority. Rose's eyes found the speaker in the crowd. He stood near the front, a tall man in dusty riding clothes with a weathered hat pulled low over his eyes. Even from the platform, she could see he was younger than most of the other bidders, perhaps 26 or 27, with broad shoulders and the lean build of someone who spent his days working hard under the sun. His face was tanned and angular, with a strong jaw and eyes that were a striking shade of blue-gray. Unlike the other men, he did not look at her with assessment or hunger. He looked at her with something that might have been compassion. 175, the saloon owner called out, irritation creeping into his voice. The tall man stepped forward slightly, and Rose could see the way others in the crowd shifted to give him space. There was something about him that commanded respect, an air of quiet confidence that needed no bluster to back it up. 200, he said calmly. A murmur ran through the crowd. $200 was a substantial sum, more than most would pay for a labor contract. The saloon owner scowled and opened his mouth as if to bid again, then seemed to think better of it. He stepped back with a curse. The auctioneer looked around hopefully for any other bidders, but the crowd had fallen silent. The tall man's bid had effectively ended the competition. "Sold to Liam Zane for $200, the auctioneer finally announced, bringing his gavel down with a sharp crack. Rose felt her knees go weak with relief that she had not been purchased by the saloon owner, but fear still gripped her heart. She knew nothing about this Liam Zane. For all she knew, he might be worse than the alternatives. As rough hands helped her down from the platform, she kept her eyes on the man who now held her contract. He was speaking with Edmund Thorne, counting out bills from a worn leather wallet. The transaction was completed quickly, and then Liam turned toward her. Rose straightened her spine, determined to face whatever came next with courage. "Miss," he said, touching the brim of his hat in a gesture that was surprisingly courteous. Up close, she could see that his eyes were indeed gray-blue, the color of storm clouds, and they held no cruelty. "I'm Liam Zane. I run a ranch about 5 miles north of town. I'll need to speak with you, but not here. Are you hungry?" The question caught her off guard. She had expected many things, but not concern for her welfare. Her stomach had been empty since the night before, and she nodded despite herself. "There's a decent restaurant across the street," Liam said. "Let's get you some food and we can talk." He did not grab her arm or order her to follow. He simply turned and walked toward the restaurant, clearly expecting her to come of her own accord. Rose hesitated only a moment before following. Whatever his intentions, she needed to understand what fate awaited her. The restaurant was small but clean, with checkered cloths on the tables and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. Liam chose a table near the window and pulled out a chair for Rose before seating himself across from her. When the waitress came, he ordered steak and potatoes for both of them, along with coffee and water. "You look like you need a proper meal," he said simply, when Rose gave him a questioning look. They sat in silence until the food arrived. Rose had intended to eat slowly and maintain her composure, but the moment the first bite of tender meat touched her tongue, her resolve crumbled. She had not realized how hungry she truly was. Liam said nothing, just ate his own meal and occasionally refilled her water glass. When her plate was finally empty and her stomach no longer ached with hunger, Rose set down her fork and met his eyes. "Why did you buy my contract?" Liam took a sip of his coffee, considering his words. "I need help at the ranch. My mother passed away 6 months ago, and the house has been falling apart without someone to manage the domestic side of things. I also have a younger sister, Sarah. She's 16 and needs someone to help with her education. When I heard there were educated women being brought in for contract work, I thought it might solve both problems." "I see," Rose said carefully. "And what exactly would my duties entail?" "Housekeeping, cooking, helping Sarah with her studies. The ranch does well enough. I have 3 men who work for me handling the cattle and horses. You would not be expected to do anything improper if that's what you're worried about." His expression was earnest, and Rose found herself wanting to believe him. "My contract says 3 years, she said, her voice tight. 3 years of indentured servitude to pay off a debt I did not even want. Liam's jaw tightened. "I know. I saw the terms. It's wrong what Thorne did to you women. Made promises he never intended to keep, then trapped you in debt." He pulled the contract from his jacket pocket and set it on the table between them. "Which is why I'm going to do something different." Rose stared at the papers, her heart beginning to race. "What do you mean? You seem like a decent woman who got dealt a bad hand," Liam said. "I'll make you a proposal. Come work at my ranch for 1 year. I'll pay you a fair wage, $20 a month plus room and board. At the end of that year, you'll have enough saved to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. You'll be free." Rose could hardly breathe. "Why would you do that?" "You paid $200 for that contract." "Because it's the right thing to do," Liam said simply. He picked up the contract and before Rose could react, tore it in half. "As far as I'm concerned, you don't owe anybody anything. You'll work for me because you choose to, and you'll be paid fair wages for your labor. If you want to leave before the year is up, you can. I won't stop you." Tears sprang to Rose's eyes before she could stop them. For 3 months, she had been treated like property, like something to be traded and sold. This man, this stranger, had just given her back her dignity and her freedom in one simple gesture. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know you stood on that platform with your head held high when you could have broken down," Liam said. "I know you have courage. That's enough for me." He pushed back from the table and stood. "I have a few supplies to pick up and then we'll head to the ranch. You can meet Sarah and see your room. If you decide it's not what you want, I'll bring you back to town tomorrow and pay you for the day's work. No obligations." Rose wiped her eyes and stood as well, her legs feeling steadier than they had all day. "Thank you, Mr. Zane. I accept your offer." "Liam," he corrected gently. "If we're going to be living under the same roof, we might as well use first names, and you're welcome, Miss Whitfield." "Rose," she said and managed a small smile. "My name is Rose." The ride to the ranch took about an hour in Liam's wagon, the 2 horses pulling them along a well-worn trail that cut through the Texas landscape. The land here was different from anything Rose had known in Boston. It was vast and open, with scrub brush and scattered mesquite trees dotting the rolling hills. The sky seemed impossibly large, stretching from horizon to horizon in an endless expanse of blue. Liam pointed out various landmarks as they traveled. A creek that ran through his property and provided water for the livestock. A rocky outcropping where he had once seen a family of foxes. A stand of cottonwood trees that offered precious shade during the worst of the summer heat. He spoke easily, without the need to fill every silence, and Rose found herself relaxing in his presence. "How long have you had the ranch?" she asked. "It was my father's originally," Liam said. "He came to Texas in 1850, bought the land, and built the house. I grew up here, learned ranching from him. He died 4 years ago, got thrown from a horse and broke his neck. My mother kept things going for a while, but her health was never strong. When she passed, it was just me and Sarah." He glanced at Rose. "Sarah took it hard. She and our mother were close. I do my best, but I'm not much good at the things a young woman needs to learn. That's part of why I wanted to hire someone, not just for the work but for Sarah's sake." "I'll do my best to help her," Rose said. "I was training to be a teacher before I came west. I love working with young people." "She'll appreciate that," Liam said. "She's had a rough time since Mother died, but she's a good girl, smart and kind-hearted." The ranch house came into view as they crested a low hill. It was a solid structure built of wood and stone, with a wide porch running along the front and a stone chimney rising from one end. Behind it stood a barn, corrals, and several smaller outbuildings. It was not grand, but it looked well-maintained and sturdy, a real home. As they pulled up to the house, the front door opened and a young woman stepped out onto the porch. Sarah was slender and blonde, with her brother's blue-gray eyes and a smattering of freckles across her nose. She wore a simple dress and had her hair pulled back in a practical braid. "Liam," she called out, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Who's this?" "Sarah, this is Rose Whitfield," Liam said as he helped Rose down from the wagon. "She's going to be staying with us, helping with the house and such. Rose, my sister Sarah." Sarah came down the porch steps slowly, her eyes taking in everything about Rose. "You're one of those women who came in on the train, aren't you? The ones who got tricked." Rose appreciated the directness. "Yes, I am." "That was a terrible thing," Sarah said firmly. "Edmund Thorne should be horsewhipped for what he did." She looked at her brother. "Did you buy her contract?" "I did, and then I tore it up," Liam said. "Rose is working for us of her own free will, for fair wages. She's an employee, not a servant. I expect you to treat her accordingly." Sarah's expression softened immediately. "Of course." She turned to Rose and offered a tentative smile. "I'm glad you're here. The house has been a disaster since Mother passed. Liam tries, but he can burn water." "I heard that," Liam said, though there was warmth in his voice. "Why don't you show Rose to Mother's old sewing room? We can set that up as her bedroom. I'll bring in her things." "I don't have much," Rose admitted. "Just one bag." "Then it won't take long," Sarah said brightly. "Come on, I'll give you the tour." The inside of the house was indeed in need of attention. Rose could see dust on the furniture, dishes stacked in the kitchen basin, and a general air of neglect that spoke to months without a woman's touch. But the bones of the home were good. The main room had a large fireplace, comfortable furniture, and windows that let in plenty of light. The kitchen was well equipped, and the bedrooms were spacious. The sewing room that would become Rose's space was small but pleasant, with a window overlooking the eastern pastures and enough room for a bed, dresser, and washstand. Sarah chattered as they walked, pointing out which floorboards creaked and where the good linens were stored, and which of the chickens in the yard was the meanest. "I'm really glad you're here," Sarah said as they returned to the main room. "It's been lonely with just Liam and me. He works so hard and he doesn't talk much anyway. Mother always kept things lively." "I'm sure you miss her terribly," Rose said gently. Sarah's eyes glistened. "Every day. She taught me everything, how to sew and cook and keep a house. She was teaching me to read better too. I can manage simple things, but the harder books still give me trouble." "Then we'll work on that together," Rose said. "Reading opens up whole worlds. I'd be happy to help you improve." "Really?" Sarah's face lit up. Mother had a whole shelf of books she brought from Missouri. "I've wanted to read them, but most of the words are too difficult." "We'll tackle them together," Rose promised. Liam appeared in the doorway with Rose's single carpet bag. "I put fresh linens on the bed," he said. "Sarah, did you show her where everything is?" "Most of it," Sarah said. "Rose, are you tired? Would you like to rest, or would you like some tea? I could put the kettle on." Rose glanced around the disordered kitchen and made a decision. "Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to get started. A clean kitchen makes everything feel better, don't you think?" Relief washed over Sarah's face. "I've been trying to keep up with it, but I'm not very good at staying organized." "Then let's work on it together," Rose said, rolling up her sleeves. "Why don't you show me where things go and we'll sort it out?" Over the next few hours, Rose fell into the familiar rhythm of domestic work. With Sarah's help, she washed and put away the dishes, scrubbed the work tables, and organized the pantry. Sarah proved to be an enthusiastic helper, chattering away about life on the ranch, the neighbors, and her hopes for the future. Rose learned that Sarah wanted to be a teacher herself one day, that she loved horses more than cattle, and that she secretly wrote poetry in a journal she kept hidden under her mattress. "Don't tell Liam," Sarah said. "He'd think it was silly." "I doubt that," Rose said. "He strikes me as someone who would support your interests." "He would," Sarah admitted. "He's a good brother, but he's so practical about everything. Poetry isn't very practical." "Neither is beauty, but we need it all the same," Rose said. "Promise me you'll show me some of your work sometime." "I'd love to read it." Sarah's smile was radiant. "I promise." When Liam came in for supper that evening, his eyes widened at the transformation. The kitchen gleamed, the table was set with proper place settings, and the smell of frying ham and biscuits filled the air. Sarah had found wildflowers and put them in a jar as a centerpiece. "Is that fresh bread?" he asked, sounding almost awed. "Biscuits," Rose corrected, pulling a pan from the oven. "I'll bake bread tomorrow once I get a feel for the oven. Everyone is different." They sat down to eat, and Rose noticed the way Liam and Sarah both seemed to relax as the meal progressed. This was more than just food. This was the restoration of something that had been missing from their home, a sense of normalcy and comfort. "This is wonderful," Liam said after his second biscuit. "I can't remember the last time we had a proper meal." "Last week's rabbit stew wasn't proper," Sarah teased. "That was boot leather in water and you know it," Liam said, but he was grinning. After dinner, Sarah insisted on helping Rose with the dishes while Liam saw to the evening chores. As they worked side by side, Sarah said quietly, "I'm really happy you're here, Rose. It already feels different having another woman in the house." "Better." "I'm happy to be here too," Rose said, and realized she meant it. For the first time in months, she felt like she had found a place where she might belong. The days settled into a comfortable pattern. Rose woke early each morning to start breakfast, usually joining Liam in the kitchen where he would already be stoking the fire in the stove. They did not talk much in those early hours, but there was a companionable quality to the silence. Liam would have his coffee, Rose would knead dough or fry eggs, and slowly the house would come alive around them. After breakfast, Liam would head out to work with his ranch hands, and Rose would spend the morning working with Sarah. They tackled the housework together first, Rose teaching Sarah better methods for organizing and maintaining a home. Then they would spend hours on lessons. Rose discovered that Sarah was bright and eager to learn, held back only by a lack of structured education. They read together, practiced arithmetic, and discussed history and geography. Sarah soaked up knowledge like parched earth drinking in rain. In the afternoons, Rose would work on the heavier tasks: laundry, deep cleaning, food preservation. Sarah often worked alongside her, and they would talk about everything and nothing. Sarah told stories about growing up on the ranch, about her parents, about the time she had tried to ride a wild Mustang and ended up in the creek. Rose found herself sharing her own stories too, about Boston, about her parents, about the dreams she had once held. "You regret coming west?" Sarah asked one afternoon as they hung laundry on the line. Rose considered the question carefully. "I regret the circumstances that brought me here. I regret trusting Edmund Thorne, but I don't regret being here now in this place. Sometimes the path we take isn't the one we planned, but that doesn't mean it's the wrong path." "That's very wise," Sarah said. "You should write that down." "You're the poet," Rose said with a smile. "You write it down." Liam usually came in for lunch, and Rose made sure to have something hot and filling ready for him. She noticed small things about him during these midday meals. The way he always asked Sarah about her lessons, genuinely interested in what she was learning. The way he carefully wiped his boots before entering the house, trying not to track in dirt. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was happening more often as the weeks passed. She noticed other things too. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he reached for something. The strength in his hands as he worked. The streak of silver in his dark hair that caught the sunlight. She told herself these observations were merely the natural result of living in close quarters, nothing more. But she could not deny that her heart beat a little faster when she heard his footsteps on the porch, or that she found herself looking forward to their brief conversations throughout the day. One evening in late October, about 6 weeks after Rose's arrival, a storm rolled in from the north. The temperature dropped sharply, and rain began to hammer against the windows. Liam came in early, soaked to the skin. "Storm's going to be a bad one," he said, water dripping from his hat. "The hands are securing everything in the barn. We might lose some shingles off the roof tonight." "Go change into dry clothes before you catch your death," Rose said, already moving toward the kitchen. "I'll make hot coffee." By the time Liam returned in dry clothes, Rose had coffee brewing and had stoked the fire in the main room's fireplace. Sarah was curled up in a chair with one of her mother's books, and the house felt like a warm sanctuary against the raging storm outside. Liam accepted a cup of coffee gratefully and stood by the fire, letting the warmth seep into his bones. "I need to check on the horses in an hour," he said. "Make sure the barn is holding." "I'll go with you," Rose said. Both Liam and Sarah looked at her in surprise. "You'll get drenched," Liam said. "So will you," Rose pointed out. "But two people can work faster than one. Besides, I'm not afraid of a little rain." Something shifted in Liam's expression, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "All right then. Thank you." When the time came, Rose wrapped herself in an old oilskin coat of Liam's mother and followed him out into the storm. The rain was cold and fierce, driven by wind that howled across the open land. They ran for the barn, and by the time they reached it, Rose was breathless and laughing despite the miserable conditions. "You're crazy," Liam said, but he was grinning as he pushed open the barn door. Inside, the horses shifted nervously in their stalls, disturbed by the storm. Liam moved among them with practiced ease, speaking in low, soothing tones while Rose helped distribute fresh hay and check that all the stall doors were secure. The barn was warm and dry, filled with the comforting smell of horses and hay. As they worked, a particularly loud crack of thunder made Rose jump. One of the horses, a young mare, reared up in her stall, eyes rolling in fear. Without thinking, Rose moved to the stall door, speaking softly. "Easy, girl, easy now. You're safe. Just a little noise, nothing to fear." The mare's ears swiveled toward Rose's voice. Rose continued talking, keeping her tone calm and gentle, and slowly the horse settled. When the mare finally lowered her head and allowed Rose to stroke her nose, Liam appeared at Rose's shoulder. "You're good with horses," he said quietly. "My father loved them," Rose said, still stroking the mare's soft muzzle. "When I was young, before times got hard, we had a little mare named Clover. He taught me how to care for her, how to read their moods." "This is Daisy," Liam said. "She's 2 years old, still learning. She's going to make a fine horse when she's older, but storms frighten her." "Don't they frighten all of us a little?" Rose said. "It's nothing to be ashamed of." Liam was quiet for a moment, then said, "You have a kind way about you, Rose. With animals, with Sarah, with everything. It's a gift." Rose felt heat rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the warmth of the barn. "Thank you," she said softly. They finished checking the barn and made their way back to the house, arriving wind-blown and soaked despite the oilskin coats. Sarah took one look at them and started laughing. "You both look like drowned cats," she said. "Drowned cats who successfully secured the barn," Liam corrected, wringing water from his hat. That night, as Rose lay in her bed listening to the storm rage outside, she realized how much her life had changed in just 6 weeks. She had arrived in Val Verde expecting nothing but hardship and servitude. Instead, she had found a home, a friend in Sarah, and something else she was not quite ready to name when she thought about Liam Zane. November brought cooler weather and shorter days. The work on the ranch shifted with the seasons, and Rose found herself settling even more deeply into the rhythms of life at the Zane homestead. She had proven herself to be not just competent but invaluable, and both Liam and Sarah had come to depend on her presence. One morning, Rose was in the kitchen preparing bread dough when she heard raised voices from outside. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window, where she could see Liam in the yard with his 3 ranch hands. A 4th man was with them, someone Rose did not recognize. He was well dressed in a city suit, looking out of place among the working men. Curious, Rose stepped out onto the porch. Liam glanced her way and something flickered across his face, anger mixed with resignation. "Rose, this is Samuel Winters," Liam said, his voice tight. "He's a land speculator from Austin. Says he's been buying up property in the area." Samuel Winters tipped his hat to Rose, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Madam, I was just explaining to Mr. Zane here that I'm prepared to make him a very generous offer for his ranch. This land is prime property and I have buyers who would pay top dollar." "The ranch isn't for sale," Liam said flatly. "Everything's for sale at the right price," Winters said smoothly. "I'm talking about real money, Mr. Zane, enough to set you and your sister up comfortably for life. You could go anywhere, do anything. Why tie yourself to this hard-scrabble piece of earth?" "Because it's my home," Liam said. "It's my family's legacy, and it's not for sale at any price." Winters's smile hardened. "That's disappointing to hear. You see, I've already purchased most of the surrounding properties. Your ranch is right in the middle of what will become a very valuable parcel. I'm sure you understand that sometimes individuals have to make sacrifices for the greater good." "The greater good, or your greater profit?" Rose found herself saying. All three men turned to look at her, and she felt her cheeks flush, but she did not back down. "It seems to me that Mr. Zane has made his position clear. This is his land, and he has every right to keep it." Winters looked at her with barely concealed condescension. "And you are a member of this household," Rose said, lifting her chin. "And someone who knows that bullying people into selling what they don't want to sell is no way to conduct business." "Rose," Liam said quietly, but there was warmth in his voice. "It's all right." Winters laughed, though there was no humor in it. "I see. Well, Mr. Zane, I'll leave my offer on the table for now, but land rights can be complicated things in Texas. Surveys get disputed, deeds go missing. It would be a shame if you found yourself tangled up in legal troubles. Much simpler to just take my money and avoid all that unpleasantness." "Is that a threat?" Liam asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "It's a friendly warning," Winters said. "I'll be in touch." He rode away, leaving a tense silence in the yard. Liam's jaw was tight and his hands were clenched at his sides. "What a horrible man," Rose said. "He's a vulture," one of the ranch hands said, spitting into the dirt. "Boss, you want us to run him off if he comes back?" "No," Liam said. "We'll handle this legally. But I want everyone keeping an eye out. If anyone sees him or his people on our land without permission, you come get me immediately." He turned to Rose. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "I'm not," Rose said. "Someone needed to tell him what a bully he is." Despite the tension, Liam's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Thank you for the support." Over the next few weeks, the shadow of Samuel Winters's visit hung over the ranch. Liam rode into town to meet with a lawyer, making sure all his deeds and documents were in order. Rose could see the worry in his eyes, the weight he carried trying to protect his home and his sister's future. One evening in mid-November, Rose found Liam sitting on the porch long after supper, staring out at the darkening land. She brought him a cup of coffee and sat down in the chair next to him. "Thank you," he said, accepting the cup. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the evening crickets singing, horses moving in the corral, the distant call of a night bird. "My father used to sit out here every evening," Liam said finally. "He'd smoke his pipe and watch the sunset. He'd tell me stories about coming to Texas, about building this place from nothing. He loved this land more than anything except my mother and us kids." "It's beautiful," Rose said. "I can understand why he loved it. When Winters threatened to take it, I realized something," Liam said. He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the last light of day. "I realized that a place is more than just land and buildings. It's the people in it. It's what makes it a home." Rose's breath caught. "Liam, you've changed things here, Rose," he continued. "When you first came, I told myself I was hiring help because we needed it. That was true, but it's become more than that. You've brought life back to this house. You've helped Sarah in ways I never could. And you've made me remember what it feels like to look forward to coming home at the end of the day." Rose felt her heart pounding. "You've given me something too," she said softly. "You gave me my freedom when you could have used me like property. You treated me with dignity and respect. You gave me a home when I had nowhere to go. I'll never forget that kindness." Liam set down his coffee cup and reached out, gently taking her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, his grip strong but careful. "It wasn't just kindness, Rose, I think you know that." She did know. She had known for weeks but had been afraid to acknowledge it. Afraid that if she admitted her growing feelings for Liam Zane, she would be setting herself up for heartbreak. But sitting here in the gathering dusk, his hand holding hers, she could no longer deny the truth. "I know," she whispered. "I'm not good with fancy words," Liam said. "I'm just a rancher, but I care about you, Rose, more than I probably should, considering you work for me, but I can't help it." "You don't have to help it," Rose said. She turned her hand in his so their fingers could intertwine. "Because I care about you too." The smile that broke across Liam's face was like sunrise, warm and full of promise. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting with tears. "We should probably take things slow," he said. "Make sure this is real and not just two lonely people finding comfort." "We should," Rose agreed. "But I already know it's real. I've known for a while now." They sat together on the porch until the stars came out, hands clasped, talking quietly about everything and nothing. When the night grew cold and they finally went inside, Rose felt as though she was floating. She had not expected to find love in Texas, especially not like this, slow and steady and built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Sarah took one look at Rose's face when she came in and immediately broke into a knowing smile. "About time," she said. Rose felt herself blush. "What do you mean?" "Oh, please," Sarah said. "I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. The way he looks at you when you're not watching. The way you always make his favorite foods. It's been obvious to everyone except apparently the two of you." "Are you all right with it?" Rose asked, suddenly anxious. "I know this changes things." Sarah came over and took both of Rose's hands in hers. "Rose, you've been like a sister to me already. If you and Liam are happy together, then I'm happy. Besides, this way you'll stay, won't you? You won't leave after your year is up." "I never wanted to leave," Rose admitted. "I just didn't think I had the right to stay." "You have every right," Sarah said firmly. "This is your home now." As winter settled over Val Verde, Rose and Liam's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain propriety. Sarah served as an ever-present chaperone, and Liam was nothing if not respectful. But there were small moments of intimacy that spoke to the growing bond between them. His hand on the small of her back as he passed her in the kitchen. Her fingers brushing his when she handed him his coffee in the morning. The way their eyes would meet across the room and they would share a private smile. Liam courted her properly. He picked wildflowers for her even in the cold weather, finding the last hardy blooms that survived the frost. He showed her his favorite places on the ranch, the creek where he had learned to fish as a boy, the hilltop where you could see for miles in every direction, the old oak tree where his father had proposed to his mother. He told her stories about his life, his dreams, his fears. And Rose shared her own stories, finding in Liam a partner who listened without judgment and understood without needing explanation. In early December, Samuel Winters made good on his implied threats. A surveyor appeared on the ranch claiming that the southern boundary was in dispute, that Liam's deed was based on faulty measurements from 20 years earlier. Liam spent days riding his property line, consulting with his lawyer, and gathering documentation to prove his claim. The stress was wearing on him. Rose could see it in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. She did what she could to help, making sure he ate properly, encouraging him to rest, and listening when he needed to talk through his frustrations. One particularly difficult evening, after Liam had spent the entire day dealing with Winters's surveyor, he came in looking utterly defeated. Rose met him at the door with a warm meal and a gentle hand on his arm. "Come, sit down," she said. "You need to eat." "I'm not hungry," Liam said, but he allowed her to lead him to the table. Sarah was already eating, and she looked at her brother with concern. "That bad?" "The surveyor's claiming we're 15 acres over our boundary," Liam said, slumping into his chair. "Winters is saying he'll withdraw the claim if I agree to sell him the disputed section at his price." "Which is robbery," Rose said firmly. "He's manufactured this entire problem just to pressure you." "I know," Liam said, "but fighting it is going to cost money I don't have. Lawyers are expensive, and if this goes to court, I could lose the whole ranch trying to defend part of it." "Then we find another way," Rose said. She sat down across from him, her mind already working through possibilities. "What if we could prove the original survey was accurate? Wouldn't that end the dispute?" "The original surveyor is long dead," Liam said. "And the records were apparently lost in a fire 15 years ago. That's why Winters thinks he can get away with this." "But surveys are based on landmarks, aren't they?" Rose pressed. "Natural features that don't change. Mountains, rivers, rock formations. If we could find those original markers and prove they match your deed description, wouldn't that work?" Liam looked at her with dawning hope. "It might. The deed does describe several specific landmarks. If I could prove they're still exactly where the original survey said they were." He stood up suddenly, energy returning. "Rose, you might have just saved the ranch." "We need to find those markers first," Rose cautioned, but she was smiling. Over the next week, Liam, Rose, and even Sarah spent their time combing through every inch of the southern boundary. They compared the deed description to the actual land, looking for the rock formations, creek bends, and distinctive trees mentioned in the original survey. It was cold, exhausting work, but Rose would not give up. This was Liam's home, his heritage, and she would fight for it as fiercely as if it were her own. Finally, on a cold December morning, they found all 6 of the original survey markers, exactly where the deed said they would be. Liam marked each one carefully, and his lawyer came out to document everything with sworn affidavits. When they presented the evidence to Winters's surveyor, the man had no choice but to admit the original survey was accurate. The dispute was withdrawn, and Winters's scheme fell apart. Liam's ranch was safe. The relief was enormous. That evening, Liam swept Rose up in a fierce embrace right there in the front yard, spinning her around while Sarah cheered and clapped. "You saved it," he said, his face buried in her hair. "You saved everything." "We saved it," Rose corrected. "All of us together." When Liam set her down, his hands lingered on her waist. His eyes were intense, full of emotions too deep for words. "Rose Whitfield, I love you. I've loved you for weeks now, maybe from the very first day when you stood on that auction block refusing to be broken. I love your courage and your kindness and your brilliant mind. I love the way you've made this house a home again. I love everything about you." Rose felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of pure joy. "I love you too, Liam, with all my heart." He kissed her then, a gentle kiss full of promise and tenderness, with Sarah whooping in the background. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. "Marry me," Liam said. "Not because of the ranch or because it's convenient. Marry me because I can't imagine spending another day of my life without you by my side." "Yes," Rose said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Sarah ran over and hugged them both. "Finally, I thought you two would never get around to it. Can I be a bridesmaid? When's the wedding?" "Oh, we have so much to plan." They were married 2 weeks later, just before Christmas, in a simple ceremony at the church in Val Verde. Most of the town turned out for it, curious to see the woman who had been bought at auction and was now becoming Mrs. Liam Zane. Rose wore a dress that had belonged to Liam's mother, altered by Sarah's careful stitching to fit her perfectly. Liam wore his best suit and could not stop smiling the entire day. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Liam kissed Rose like she was the most precious thing in the world. The gathering erupted in applause and cheers. At the small reception afterward, several of the other women who had been brought west with Rose came to offer their congratulations. Some had found legitimate employment, others had married, and a few had saved enough to return east. Seeing them thriving despite Edmund Thorne's deception filled Rose with quiet satisfaction. They had all survived, all found ways to reclaim their dignity. As the celebration wound down, Liam led Rose out to his wagon, newly decorated with ribbons by Sarah and some of the neighbor children. They rode back to the ranch under a sky full of stars, Rose tucked against Liam's side, his arm around her shoulders. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Rose said. "When I stood on that auction block, I thought my life was over. I never imagined I would end up here, married to a good man, part of a family I love." "You gave me my life back too," Liam said. "I was just going through the motions after Mother died. You reminded me what it meant to truly live, to hope, to love." Back at the ranch, Sarah had thoughtfully made herself scarce, leaving a note that she was spending the night with a neighbor friend. The house was quiet and warm, the fire burning low in the hearth. Liam carried Rose over the threshold, a tradition she had read about but never expected to experience. He set her down gently in the middle of the main room, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Liam cupped her face in his hands, his touch infinitely gentle. "I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy," he said. "I promise to honor you, protect you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. You're my partner, Rose, in everything." "And you're mine," Rose said. "I love you, Liam Zane, today and always." They came together in a kiss that spoke of love and passion and the promise of all the years ahead. When Liam led her to the bedroom they would now share, Rose went willingly, her heart full to bursting with joy. Their wedding night was everything Rose had hoped it would be: tender and passionate, filled with whispered words of love and the joy of finally being truly united. Liam was gentle and patient, attentive to her needs, making sure she felt cherished and loved. Rose had been nervous, but with Liam, everything felt natural and right. They belonged together, and their physical union was simply another expression of the love they had already built through months of friendship, respect, and growing affection. Afterward they lay tangled together in the darkness, Rose's head on Liam's chest, his fingers running gently through her hair. "I still can't quite believe this is real," Rose murmured. "That I'm really your wife." "Believe it," Liam said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're stuck with me now, Mrs. Zane." "I can think of worse fates," Rose said with a smile. The winter months passed in a blur of happiness. Rose threw herself into making the ranch house truly her own, adding little touches that made it feel complete. She sewed new curtains for the windows, organized the pantry with ruthless efficiency, and even convinced Liam to help her paint the kitchen a cheerful yellow that brightened the whole house. Sarah thrived under Rose's continued tutelage, advancing rapidly in her studies. By February, she was reading novels that would have challenged many adults, and her poetry had developed a maturity that surprised even Rose. Sarah began to talk seriously about becoming a teacher, and Rose encouraged her wholeheartedly. "You have a gift," Rose told her one afternoon as they reviewed Sarah's latest essay. "You explain things clearly and you're patient. Those are the marks of a good teacher." "I learned from the best," Sarah said, giving Rose a quick hug. "I don't know what I would have done without you this year. You've been the sister I never had. And you've been the same for me," Rose said warmly. "I'm so proud of you, Sarah." Liam and Rose settled into married life with remarkable ease. They had already known each other well before the wedding, had already established patterns of communication and cooperation. Marriage simply allowed them to deepen that connection. They talked about everything ranch business, Sarah's future, their own hopes and dreams. Liam consulted Rose on major decisions, valuing her perspective and trusting her judgment. Rose had never imagined a marriage could be such a true partnership, but Liam made it clear every day that he saw her as his equal. In March, Rose realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had wanted to be certain before telling anyone. When she finally shared the news with Liam one evening after supper, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up carefully, mindful of their precious cargo, and spun her in a gentle circle, his face radiant with joy. "A baby," he said in wonder. "We're going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Rose asked, though she could already see the answer in his eyes. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Liam said. He set her down and knelt before her, pressing his forehead gently against her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I can't wait to meet you." Sarah was equally thrilled at the prospect of becoming an aunt. She immediately began knitting tiny blankets and booties, poring over Rose's medical books to learn everything she could about pregnancy and infant care. "I'm going to be the best aunt," Sarah declared. "This baby is going to be so loved." "Already is," Rose said, her hand resting on her stomach. "Already is." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Rose continued her regular work around the house, though Liam became increasingly protective as the months went on, insisting she not overexert herself. Rose found his concern touching, even if she sometimes had to remind him that she was pregnant, not made of glass. In late May, as Rose was entering her 5th month, Samuel Winters made one final attempt to acquire the Zane ranch. He appeared at the door one afternoon with a new offer, even higher than before. "You've proven yourself a difficult man to pressure, Mr. Zane," Winters said. "So I'm trying a different approach. I'm prepared to offer you $5,000 for your property. That's more than fair." "It's not about the money," Liam said. "This is my home. My child is going to be born here, grow up here. You can offer me 10,000, 100,000, the answer will still be no." "A child," Winters's eyes flicked to Rose, taking in her condition. "Well, congratulations are in order. All the more reason to take my offer. That money could provide your family with security." "My family has security right here," Liam said firmly. "We have land that provides for us, a home filled with love and everything we need. Your money can't buy what we already have." Rose stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her husband. "Mr. Winters, my husband has made his position clear multiple times. It's time you accepted it and moved on. This ranch is not for sale. It will never be for sale. Please leave." Winters looked between them, frustration evident in his expression. Finally, he shook his head. "You're both fools. You could have had enough money to live like royalty." "We'd rather live like ranchers," Rose said. "Now please go." After Winters left, Liam pulled Rose into his arms. "Have I mentioned lately that I have the most amazing wife in Texas?" "Not in the last hour," Rose teased. "I was beginning to wonder." "You're incredible," he said seriously. "The way you stood up to him, the way you always stand beside me. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every day. You bought my freedom and gave me your name." Rose said softly, echoing the words that had become a touchstone for them both. You saw me as a person when others saw property. That's what you did to deserve me. Their son was born on a warm October evening in 1873, nearly a year to the day after Rose had first arrived at the ranch. The labor was long and difficult, but Rose was strong, and she had Liam beside her the entire time, holding her hand and offering words of encouragement. Sarah assisted the midwife with calm efficiency, putting her book learning to practical use. When the baby finally arrived, lusty and squalling, Liam cut the cord with trembling hands. The midwife cleaned the infant and wrapped him in one of Sarah's hand-knitted blankets before placing him in Rose's arms. A boy, the midwife announced. A healthy, strong boy. Rose looked down at her son, marveling at his tiny, perfect features, his shock of dark hair, and his already evident resemblance to his father. "Hello, sweetheart," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Liam sat on the edge of the bed, his arm around Rose, staring at their child with an expression of pure awe. "He's perfect. You're perfect. I don't have words for what I'm feeling right now." "You don't need words," Rose said, leaning into him. "I know." They named him Thomas after Liam's father. Thomas Liam Zane, a name that honored the past while looking toward the future. From the moment he entered the world, little Thomas was surrounded by love. Liam proved to be a devoted father, happy to help with night feedings and diaper changes despite his rough rancher's hands. Sarah was a doting aunt who could soothe Thomas when he was fussy with a skill that surprised everyone. And Rose poured all her love into caring for this tiny person who had completed their family. The ranch prospered over the next few years. Liam's careful management and hard work paid off, and they were able to expand their herd and improve their facilities. Rose managed the household and finances with the same efficiency she brought to everything. And together, she and Liam built something that was more than just a working ranch. It was a true home, filled with warmth and laughter. Sarah graduated from the local school at 17 with top marks, and with Rose and Liam's encouragement and financial support, she enrolled in a teacher training program in San Antonio. It was hard to see her go, but Rose knew Sarah needed to spread her wings. "I'll come back," Sarah promised as she prepared to leave. "This will always be my home, but I need to do this, need to prove I can make my own way." "We know you can," Rose said, hugging her tight. "You're going to be a wonderful teacher. Write to us every week." "I will," Sarah promised. "And take care of my nephew. Tell him Aunt Sarah loves him." With Sarah away at school, the house felt quieter, but Rose and Liam cherished having time as just their little family of 3. Thomas grew from a baby to a toddler, full of energy and curiosity about everything. He adored the ranch animals, had no fear of horses, and followed his father around whenever possible. "He's going to be a rancher," Liam said proudly one afternoon, watching Thomas toddle after a very patient barn cat. "He's 2 years old," Rose said with amusement. "He has plenty of time to decide what he wants to be." "True," Liam conceded. "But did you see how he handled that rope yesterday? Natural talent." In 1876, when Thomas was 3, Rose found herself pregnant again. This time, she recognized the signs immediately. Liam's joy was no less intense than it had been the first time, and Thomas, when they explained he was going to be a big brother, was both excited and a little confused about what exactly that meant. "Baby?" he asked, patting Rose's stomach. "Yes, sweetheart," Rose said. "A baby brother or sister for you to play with." Their daughter arrived in March of 1877, born during a spring rainstorm that washed the world clean and left everything fresh and new. The labor was quicker this time, and when Rose held her newborn daughter for the first time, she cried tears of pure happiness. "She's beautiful," Liam said, his voice choked with emotion. "She looks just like you." They named her Margaret after Rose's mother, but called her Maggie from the start. Maggie had Rose's auburn hair and Liam's blue-gray eyes, and from the beginning, she had a personality all her own, sweet but stubborn, gentle but determined. Thomas took his role as big brother very seriously, always wanting to help with Maggie, bringing her his toys, and announcing to anyone who would listen, "My baby." Sarah came home from San Antonio that summer, having completed her training. She had secured a position as a teacher in Val Verde itself, which meant she could live at the ranch and commute to town each day. "I'm so glad to be home," she said, holding Maggie while Thomas showed her all his favorite spots on the ranch. "I missed this place every single day I was gone." "We missed you too," Rose said. "It's good to have the family all together again." The years that followed were golden ones. The ranch continued to thrive, providing a comfortable living for the family. Thomas and Maggie grew up surrounded by love, learning to ride almost before they could walk, helping with age-appropriate chores, and receiving an excellent education from their mother and Aunt Sarah. Sarah met and married a local banker named William Harper in 1879, a kind man who appreciated her intelligence and spirit. They built a house in town but visited the ranch frequently, and Sarah never gave up teaching, becoming one of Val Verde's most respected educators. Rose and Liam's marriage deepened with each passing year. They had their disagreements, as any couple does, but they had built their relationship on a foundation of respect and genuine friendship that weathered any storm. They supported each other through challenges, droughts that tested the ranch, illnesses that frightened them, the normal struggles of raising children and running a business. But they faced everything together as true partners. On a warm evening in the spring of 1882, 10 years after Rose had stood on that auction block, she and Liam sat together on the porch watching the sunset. Thomas and Maggie were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Inside, Sarah and William were visiting, their own children, a boy and a girl, napping after a long day of playing with their cousins. "You ever think about that day?" Liam asked, his arm around Rose's shoulders. "The day I bought your contract." "Sometimes," Rose admitted. "It feels like a different lifetime. I was so scared that day, so uncertain about what would happen to me." "You didn't look scared," Liam said. "You looked fierce. That's what caught my attention, the way you refused to be defeated." "I was terrified," Rose said with a laugh. "But I'm glad I looked fierce." She turned to face him, taking his hand in hers. "You changed my life that day, Liam. You gave me everything: freedom, dignity, a home, a family. You gave me love. I don't know how to thank you for all of that." "You don't need to thank me," Liam said. "You gave me just as much. You brought life and love back into this house. You gave me children and partnership and happiness beyond anything I imagined. If anything, I should be thanking you." "Then we're even," Rose said, smiling. "More than even," Liam said. He kissed her, a gentle kiss that still carried all the passion and promise it had held on their wedding day. "I love you, Rose Zane, today and always." "And I love you," Rose said, "today and always." They sat together as the sun set over the Texas landscape, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Thomas came running up to the porch, Maggie right behind him, both of them talking excitedly about the toad they had found by the creek. Rose laughed and listened to their chatter, her heart full to overflowing. This was her life now. This ranch, this family, this love. She had been traded like cattle at a market, bought and sold like property. But Liam had bought her freedom and given her his name, and in doing so had given her everything that mattered. She had found her home, her purpose, and her place in the world. In 1885, Rose gave birth to their third child, another son they named James. Thomas was 12 by then, already working alongside his father on the ranch, and Maggie at 8 was a whirlwind of energy who wanted to do everything her big brother did. James completed their family in a way Rose had not even known was missing. The ranch expanded further over the years. Liam's reputation for fair dealing and quality livestock spread throughout Texas, and buyers came from across the state to purchase his horses and cattle. He hired more hands, built additional corrals and outbuildings, and turned the Zane Ranch into one of the most successful operations in the region. But success never changed who Liam was at his core. He remained the same fair, hardworking, decent man Rose had fallen in love with. He treated his workers well, paid them fairly, and helped neighbors when they struggled. He raised his children to value honesty and hard work, to treat all people with respect regardless of their station in life. "Remember where your mother came from," he told Thomas one day when his son was 14, and getting a little too prideful about the family's success. She stood on an auction block because circumstances beyond her control put her there. She could have been broken by that experience, but instead she rose above it. "Never judge people by their situations, son. Judge them by their character and their actions." Thomas took the lesson to heart, and Rose loved Liam all the more for teaching it. The years rolled on in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Christmases gathered the whole extended family together, with Sarah and William's children joining the chaos of cousins playing and adults catching up. There were summer picnics by the creek, fall harvest celebrations, and spring brandings where neighbors came to help and stayed for Rose's famous barbecue. Rose became a pillar of the Val Verde community, known for her kindness and her willingness to help those in need. When other women found themselves in difficult circumstances, Rose was often the first to offer assistance alone, a job, a place to stay, or simply a listening ear and sound advice. She never forgot what it felt like to be desperate and powerless, and she used her position to help others however she could. In 1890, Edmund Thorne, the man who had trafficked Rose and so many other women to Texas under false pretenses, was finally brought to justice. New laws against such practices had been enacted, and several of his former victims came forward with testimony. Thorne was convicted and sentenced to prison, and Rose felt a sense of closure she had not realized she needed. "It's over," she told Liam the night they received the news. "He can't hurt anyone else now." "You were always stronger than he was," Liam said. "You survived him and you built a good life. He gets to spend the rest of his days in a cell. I'd say justice was served." Thomas grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over more and more of the ranch operations as Liam aged. At 20, he met and fell in love with a schoolteacher named Elizabeth, and they were married in 1893 in a ceremony that filled the Val Verde church to capacity. Rose cried happy tears watching her firstborn start his own family. Maggie developed a passion for horses and became one of the finest riders in the county, eventually breeding and training horses that were sought after throughout Texas. She was fierce and independent, and Rose saw much of her own determination reflected in her daughter. James, the youngest, inherited Rose's love of books and learning. He eventually went to college in Austin and became a lawyer, using his skills to help people who could not afford representation. Rose was immensely proud of all her children, of the good people they had become. In the spring of 1895, Liam and Rose celebrated their 22nd wedding anniversary. Sarah organized a huge party at the ranch, inviting friends and neighbors from across the county. The house and yard were filled with people, laughter, music, and dancing. At one point in the evening, Liam led Rose away from the crowd to the top of the hill overlooking the ranch, the same spot where he had first shown her his favorite view years earlier. 22 years, he said, his arm around her waist. Seems like both forever and no time at all. Rose leaned into him, looking out at the land they had built their life upon. The house lights twinkled below, music drifting up on the evening air. Their children and grandchildren, Thomas and Elizabeth, had blessed them with 2 grandchildren already were down there somewhere, part of the celebration. I would live all 22 years again in a heartbeat, Rose said. Every challenge, every joy, every moment, because they all led to this. I can't imagine my life without you, Liam said. You're my heart, Rose. You always have been. And you're mine, Rose said. She turned in his arms to face him. His hair was streaked with silver now, and there were lines around his eyes and mouth from years of smiling and squinting in the sun. He was still the handsomest man she had ever seen. Thank you for buying my freedom all those years ago. Thank you for seeing me as a person when I was being treated as property. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for saying yes, Liam said. Thank you for making this house a home. Thank you for giving me a family and a life beyond my wildest dreams. Thank you for loving me back. They kissed there on the hilltop, surrounded by the land they loved, the family they had built, and the life they had created together. It was a perfect moment, one of thousands they had shared over the years and would continue to share in the years to come. The party continued long into the night, filled with stories and laughter. People spoke of Liam's integrity and Rose's kindness, of the example they had set for their children and their community. It was a celebration not just of a marriage, but of a partnership that had enriched the lives of everyone it touched. As the guests finally began to depart and the stars wheeled overhead, Rose and Liam stood together on their porch one last time, hands clasped, watching the last wagons disappear down the road. "Happy anniversary, my love," Liam said. "Happy anniversary," Rose replied. They went inside together, into the home they had built, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had created, photographs on the walls, children's drawings tacked up in the kitchen, worn furniture that held 1,000 memories. This was their legacy, built not on land or money but on love, respect, and the courage to see each other truly. Rose Whitfield had stood on an auction block in 1872, traded like cattle at a market, her future uncertain and her spirit tested. But Liam Zane had bought her freedom and given her his name, and in doing so had given her a chance at a new life. Together, they had seized that chance and built something beautiful, something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. Their love story was not one of instant passion or dramatic gestures. It was quieter than that, built on daily choices and steady commitment. It was partnership and respect, understanding and trust. It was 2 people who had started as strangers and had become each other's home. And it was a love story that would continue, written in the lives of their children and grandchildren, in the land they had stewarded, and in the community they had served. The Zane Ranch would stand for generations, a testament to what could be built when 2 people loved each other truly and lived their values daily. Years later, when Rose was an old woman sitting in a rocking chair on that same porch, surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren, she would think back to that September day in 1872. She would remember the fear and the shame, the uncertainty and the desperation. But mostly, she would remember the moment Liam Zane stepped forward to bid on her contract, the moment her life changed forever. She would remember his kindness, his respect, his love. She would remember building a life together, weathering storms both literal and metaphorical, raising children and growing old side by side. She would remember laughter and tears, challenges and triumphs, ordinary days that became extraordinary simply because they were shared. And she would know with absolute certainty that standing on that auction block had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Home. The end.